The air was alive with the sound of laughter and the rhythm of drums. Joy spread like fire as hands clapped and feet stomped to the harvest song. The villagers, dressed in bright colors, danced in a circle, their voices lifted in harmony. In awe. The center of the crowd, a young woman spun with grace, her movements full of life. Suddenly, she stumbled. Her hands clutched her stomach as a sharp cry broke through the music. The drums stopped. The crowd froze. She fell to the ground, writhing as if something unseen tormented her. Gasps filled the air, followed by whispers of fear. An elder, wrapped in robes marked with ancient patterns, stepped forward. A hush fell over the crowd as all eyes turned to the figure, whose voice carried the weight of years. "This is no sickness," the elder declared. "This is the mark of Njoka, the river god. A curse has awakened." The villagers exchanged nervous glances. Murmurs rippled through the group like waves in a storm. "It's her family," someone whispered. "The sins of the father," another muttered. "The river's anger is upon us." The young woman twisted on the ground, her cries sharp and piercing. Her mother rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside her. "Help her," she pleaded. "What must we do? Tell me, please." Her hands trembled as she reached out toward the elder. The elder's face was solemn, eyes fixed on the writhing figure. With a deep breath, the elder spoke again, voice steady. "Long ago, Njoka blessed this land with water and life, but a betrayal broke the sacred bond. A pact was shattered, and the river turned its back on us. Now, its spirit demands justice." The crowd stirred uneasily. Children were pulled closer to their mothers. Men exchanged uneasy glances. "What kind of justice?" a voice called from the back. The elder lifted a hand to silence the question. "If Njoka's rage is not calmed," the elder warned, "there will be drought. The fields will wither, the river will dry, famine will come, and death will follow." As the words sank in, the young woman's cries softened, replaced by heavy breathing. Her body lay still, though her face twisted in pain. The elder's gaze swept across the gathered crowd, resting briefly on one man. His face was pale, his fists clenched at his sides. He stood apart, eyes avoiding the others. The whispers grew, louder. Some villagers pointed toward the man, suspicion in their eyes. "It's his fault," someone said. "His greed angered the gods," another added. Others called for mercy, pleading for calm, but the group's fear was like a fire, spreading fast and fierce. Through her pain, the young woman's voice rose, shaky but determined. "I will not let this destroy us." Her hand gripped the ground as she pushed herself to her knees. Her voice grew stronger. "I will find the truth. I will end this curse." Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and threatening, as the villagers fell silent. All eyes turned to the darkening sky, and unease rippled through the crowd. The elder looked up, a shadow passing over their face. "The storm is coming," they said. "The trials are just beginning." The drums did not start again. The laughter was gone. The celebration had turned to silence, and the village braced for what was to come. The villagers spoke of Njoka as they spoke of the rains, reverent, fearful, yet resigned. But when the story was told to Abena, she often raised her voice. "How long will we fear shadows? Is it the curse or our own silence that keeps us bound?" Her words stirred murmurs among the crowd. The elders, faces etched with disapproval, warned her to hold her tongue. "To question Njoka is to summon his wrath," they said. But some of the younger villagers, standing at the edges, exchanged glances of admiration. Her defiance carried a spark of hope they dared not voice aloud. The elder who spoke most often of Njoka's wrath, however, was different that day. As the others chastised her, a small smile flickered on their lips before vanishing. When pressed further, the elder turned away and muttered, "There is more to fear than what you can see." A pair of watchful eyes followed Abena wherever she went. In the quiet corners of the village, Kweku's gaze lingered, filled with admiration and concern. He had heard every word she spoke, his heart leaping with each bold challenge she made. But he said nothing, holding his feelings like a treasure, hidden deep within. When whispers of Njoka's curse reached his ears, his resolve hardened. Whatever trials lay ahead, he vowed, he would not let her face them alone. While the younger ones admired her fire, her father sat in silence. His shoulders, once proud and upright, seemed to sag lower each day. As the villagers gossiped about the curse, they often cast sidelong glances at him. Whispers of betrayal and greed were always just loud enough for him to hear. His fists clenched at his sides as he walked away, but he never denied the rumors. The elder's voice carried over the crowd as they gathered in uneasy silence. "You know the story of Nyoka," the elder began, pacing slowly. "The river god, who brought water to our fields and life to our homes. But you know, too, of the betrayal that shattered his blessing. A hand reached where it should not have, and what was sacred was taken." The words were like an old wound reopened. The villagers shifted uncomfortably, their faces shadowed by the weight of memory. "Njoka does not forgive so easily," the elder continued. "His spirit still watches, and his justice is never far." One by one, the villagers repeated the tale in murmurs. They spoke of the snake, a guardian and a curse, slipping into the hearts of those marked by Njoka. "It protects," the elder added, voice dropping to a whisper. "But it punishes too." In the days that followed, Amina's strength waned. The sharp pains came more often, leaving her gasping for breath. She pressed on, refusing to let her weakness show, but the villagers began to notice. Fear crept into their voices as they spoke. "She bears the mark," they whispered. "It will destroy us all." The rumors spread quickly. Some called for action, demanding the family's exile to appease Njoka. Others begged for mercy, unwilling to condemn the innocent. But the whispers grew louder, and the family's home became a place of loneliness. Visitors stopped coming. Neighbors turned away. What was once warm and welcoming had become cold and empty. Her father's silence gnawed at her. One evening, she stood before him, her voice steady despite the pain. "What aren't you telling me?" she asked. He avoided her eyes, but she pressed on. "The whispers, the stares, it's all because of you, isn't it?" His shoulders slumped, his hands trembling at his sides. Still, he said nothing, but in his silence, she found her answer. With determination in her heart and anger burning in her chest, she turned away. "If you won't tell me," she said, her voice sharp, "I'll find the truth myself." The night was quiet, but in the distance, the sound of the river seemed louder than before. The current rushed as though it carried secrets waiting to be revealed. Amina clenched her fists, her body trembling under the weight of her growing weakness. "This curse will not break me," she declared. Her voice, though strained, carried conviction. "I will uncover the truth. I will end this." Each night, her dreams were filled with the image of a serpent. Its eyes glowed like fire, piercing her soul as it slithered closer. Its scales shimmered, reflecting every unspoken warning. When she awoke, her chest was tight, her breath shallow, and the dreams lingered like a shadow that refused to leave. The elder stood before the villagers, staff in hand, eyes dark with concern. "There is one place where answers may lie," the elder said. "The Forbidden Grove, but it is a place of peril. Only those ready to face Njoka's spirit should enter." The villagers gasped, shaking their heads. "No one survives the grove," they muttered. "It's madness to even try." "I will go," Amina announced, her voice slicing through their protests. Murmurs of disapproval rose, but she did not falter. She turned to the elder. "Show me the way." A voice called out from the crowd. "You won't go alone." A figure stepped forward, standing tall beside her. The villagers argued, begging them to reconsider. "The grove will swallow you whole," they cried. But the decision was made. The journey began with silence between them. The weight of their mission hung heavy in the air. The path grew treacherous as the ground turned soft beneath their feet. Amina's foot sank into the earth, and she cried out as it pulled her deeper. Hands reached out, gripping hers, pulling her free. "Stay close," came the warning. Together, they pushed forward. The forest seemed alive, eyes watching them from every shadow. Low growls echoed around them, and they turned just in time to see glowing eyes and sharp teeth. The beasts lunged, their snarls breaking the silence. Branches cracked, and the ground shifted as the two worked together, moving swiftly to outsmart the predators. When the last growl faded into the distance, they leaned against a tree, catching their breath. A voice broke the stillness. "You've come far," it said. They turned to see a figure emerging from the trees. The stranger's gaze was sharp, their presence commanding. "You seek Njoka," the figure said, "but the answers you seek require a price." Their words were cryptic, laced with warning. "The serpent's rage cannot be calmed without blood," they said. "Are you prepared to make such a sacrifice?" Amina's jaw tightened. "Whatever it takes," she said. But her companion's gaze flickered with doubt. The figure gave no more answers, only a gesture to continue forward. As they pressed on, pieces of the truth began to reveal themselves. Amina's mind raced as she pieced together the fragments. Her father's unease, the whispers of stolen treasures, it all began to make sense. Anger swirled within her. "He knew," she whispered. "He's the reason for all of this." The figure's words replayed in her mind. Blood must be spilled. Her steps faltered, torn between her anger and her love. "How could he?" she murmured. "But he's my father." The trees grew thicker, and the air heavier. A low hiss made them freeze. A serpent slithered into their path, its body massive, its movements deliberate. It paused, lifting its head to meet their gaze. The air crackled with energy. The serpent's voice was a whisper, yet it carried power. "Turn back," it warned, "or face the weight of truth." They stood firm, though their hands shook. The serpent lingered, its gaze unblinking, before disappearing into the shadows. They exchanged a glance, their fear replaced by resolve. Step by step, they moved forward, their goal within reach. As they neared the grove, the tension between them eased. The truth awaited, and the weight of the journey began to settle. They could feel the presence of something vast and powerful ahead, calling them forward. With heavy hearts and determined minds, they prepared to face whatever lay beyond. The grove loomed ahead, silent and foreboding. Each step felt heavier than the last as shadows danced around them. The rustling of unseen creatures sent shivers through the air, but they pressed on, their breath steady, their resolve unbroken. The air thickened, and the silence grew deafening, a weight pressing down on them with every heartbeat. Then, the ground trembled. A glow emerged from the heart of the grove, growing brighter until it filled every corner with a blinding light. From the light came the serpent, its body coiling and rising higher than they could fathom. Scales shimmered with colors that seemed alive, and its eyes burned with ancient fury. Its presence consumed the space, leaving no room for doubt or fear. Voice boomed from the serpent, shaking the ground beneath their feet. "Betrayers!" it thundered. The river wept, and the land cried out. "Your family's greed poisoned the waters, and now you stand before me as though your hands are clean." The words struck like a blow, and their knees weakened under the Einscheiß serpent's gaze. "We came to make this right," one of them said, voice steady despite the fear. The serpent's laughter echoed like thunder. "Make it right? What justice can you bring when the pact was broken and trust shattered?" One stepped forward, hands raised, voice pleading. "Punish me if you must, but spare her. She carries no guilt for her family's past." The serpent's gaze shifted, its eyes narrowing. "You dare to plead for mercy in my grove? What mercy was shown to the river when its lifeblood was stolen?" The glow from the serpent grew brighter, and the air hummed with energy. Then it spoke again, its tone shifting. "The snake within her belly, the one you call a curse, it is no curse. It is my guardian, placed to guide her, to reveal the truth, and to protect her from those who would harm her." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Her breath caught, and her mind raced. The pain, the visions, the fear, it had all been leading her here, not as punishment, but as a path. She looked at the serpent, her voice trembling but firm. If that is true, then guide me now. Tell me what must be done to heal the river and end this suffering. The serpent's eyes blazed. Penance must be made, it declared. The one who broke the pact must answer for his sin. A life for the jewels stolen, a life to restore the balance. Her heart pounded. She knew the answer before it came, yet it struck her like a blade. You mean my father, she said softly. The serpent said nothing, its silence more damning than words. She stepped forward, her voice rising. Then take me instead. It was his choice, but it will not be his burden. Let my life repay the debt. Let this end with me. The serpent tilted, its head watching her closely. You would offer yourself? It asked. Do you understand the weight of what you say? Her resolve did not waver. I do, she said. If it will save the village, my family, and the river, then I do. The serpent coiled tighter, its body radiating power. So be it, it said, but your resolve must be tested. The light around it flared, and she was consumed by visions, her deepest fears, her most painful memories, and the weight of her family's legacy. Her knees buckled, but she did not fall. Her heart ached, but she did not falter. I am ready, she said, her voice a whisper yet filled with strength. Before the serpent could speak again, a voice cut through the tension. No! Another stepped forward, standing between her and the serpent. Take me instead, the voice said. She is the one who will lead us forward. She is the one who will heal what was broken. My life is worth less than hers. The serpent paused, its gaze shifting between them. Time seemed to stand still, the weight of the moment pressing on them all. At last, the serpent spoke. Selflessness in the face of despair. Courage in the shadow of fear. You both show the strength that was lost long ago. The light around the serpent dimmed, and its voice softened. I will not take either of you. Instead, you will perform the sacred ritual to restore the balance. The river will flow, and the village will heal. But you must carry the weight of this bond for the rest of your lives. The serpent turned its gaze to her. The guardian within you will leave, but its mark will remain. You are the protector now, the keeper of this covenant. Its glow began to fade, its immense form dissolving into the shadows. Remember this day. Remember what was sacrificed to save what was lost. As the serpent vanished, she felt a warmth leave her body. The pain was gone, replaced by a strength she had never known. Her eyes met her companions, and no words were needed. Together they turned toward the village, ready to face the dawn of a new purpose. Abena stood tall, her voice unwavering. Take me, she said. If my life can restore the balance, then let it be so. Spare my father. The debt will end with me. Her words echoed through the grove, carried on the heavy air. All eyes turned to her, disbelief and sorrow written on every face. The serpent's glow dimmed, and the silence grew deeper. Time stretched as the spirit seemed to weigh her offer. The world itself felt as though it held its breath, waiting for a verdict. The serpent's eyes burned brighter for a moment, then softened. You would give your life for his? It asked. Its voice no longer thundered but carried a solemn weight. Do you understand the burden of such a choice? She nodded, her gaze steady. I do, she said. The curse ends here. The serpent coiled tighter, its energy vibrating through the ground. Then its voice softened further. Your courage has moved me, it said. Your sacrifice will not be taken. But a price must still be paid. A gasp rippled through the grove. The serpent's glow spread outward, bathing everything in its light. You will not die today, it declared, but your destiny will change. To heal the river, you must become its guardian. The bond will be eternal, and your life will serve as its protector. Tears welled in her father's eyes. He stepped forward, his voice trembling. "I am sorry," he said. "I was weak. I thought I was saving us, but I doomed us instead. Forgive me." He fell to his knees, his hands trembling as he reached for hers. She looked down at him, her heart heavy with sorrow but filled with resolve. "I forgive you," she said softly, "but we must all carry this burden together." Above them, the sky darkened, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The dry, cracked earth soaked it up eagerly, and within moments the rain grew stronger. The serpent's glow pulsed one final time before dimming. "The balance is restored," it said. "The river flows again. Go now and prepare for the ritual. Remember what has been given." As the serpent faded, the grove came alive with the sound of water rushing through unseen streams. The rain cleansed the air, washing away the tension and leaving a sense of renewal. Together, they turned back toward the village, their hearts lighter than they had been in days. When they arrived, the villagers stood waiting. For a moment, there was only silence. Then cheers erupted, voices lifted in celebration. Children ran. Through the rain, their laughter filling the air. The once dry fields began to sprout green shoots, a promise of harvest to come. Abena stepped forward, and the villagers surrounded her, their earlier fear replaced by admiration. "You saved us," they said. "You are a hero." But she shook her head. "This is not the end," she said. "My journey does not end here." She turned to her family, her voice breaking slightly. "I cannot stay," she said. "The river calls to me. It is my duty now." Tears fell freely as she embraced them, her heart heavy with the weight of goodbye. "Take care of each other," she said. "And remember, this was never just about us. It was for the village." Her companions stood apart, silent but watching. As she passed, their eyes met, and 1,000 unspoken words hung in the air. No, promises were made aloud, but a quiet vow lingered between them. No matter where the river flowed, they would remain connected. At the river's edge, she performed the ritual. The serpent's voice echoed faintly as she chanted the sacred words. The water rose, surrounding her in a gentle embrace, and a warmth spread through her chest. She felt the bond strengthen, the river's energy coursing through her veins. When it was done, the serpent's voice came one last time. "Strength lies in sacrifice," it said, "and love gives meaning to it all. Protect this river as it protects your people. You are its keeper now." She stood by the river, watching it flow. The current was steady, its song soothing. The village thrived once more, its unity restored by her courage. Though her path was solitary, she felt no loneliness. The river was her purpose, and she embraced it fully, finding peace in her new role as its protector. Abena sat quietly by the river, the sound of flowing water soothing the thoughts that swirled in her mind. Her journey had been long, each step marked by sacrifice and courage. She thought of the serpent's eyes, blazing with fury and wisdom. She had stood before it with fear in her heart, but refused to let it control her. Fear, she realized, was only a shadow that faded when confronted. The weight of her family's choices rested heavily on her shoulders. The betrayal of the river god had nearly destroyed them all, but she had taken that burden, faced it, and found a way to restore balance. She smiled faintly, not with pride, but with the quiet knowledge that she had done what was right. The village was thriving again because she had made a choice no one else could. She closed her eyes, remembering the moments when doubt had crept into her soul. The grove, the serpent, the whispers of the villagers, all had pushed her to her limits. Yet, in every moment of uncertainty, she had discovered a hidden strength. She had learned to trust herself, even when the path ahead was shrouded in darkness. It was a lesson she would carry forever. The river's song rose, and she thought of her family. Love had guided her actions, but duty had demanded sacrifice. She had left behind the warmth of home to protect the community. This choice had been painful, but it had shown her the true meaning of selflessness. The well-being of many outweighed her personal desires. Her heart ached for the moments she had lost, but she knew her decision had been the right one. The serpent. Inside her, once seen as a curse, had been her greatest guide. It had been her protector, showing her the truth when lies and fear clouded her vision. It had taught her that curses and blessings often wore the same face. What had once been a burden had become her strength, shaping her into a leader the village could look up to. She opened her eyes, watching the river glisten under the light. Each trial she had faced had brought her here, stronger and wiser. The serpent's wrath had been fierce, but it had taught her that growth comes through adversity. The person she was now would not have existed without the challenges she had endured. Her voice was quiet but steady as she spoke to herself. "They must know," she said. "Even in the darkest times, there is a path forward. Redemption is not easy, but it is always possible." She resolved to share her story, to teach the village that strength lies in unity and courage, and that even broken bonds can be mended with love and sacrifice. The river flowed, steady and eternal, a testament to the balance that had been restored. The serpent's spirit lingered in her thoughts, no longer a symbol of fear, but one of respect and wisdom. Its lessons would guide her and the village for generations to come. She rose slowly, her gaze steady and clear. The river was her purpose, now, its guardian and protector. Its song would echo in her heart, reminding her of the journey she had taken and the legacy she now carried forward. The elder's voice carried weight, each word deliberate. "The truth is not always what it seems. The river remembers, even when we forget." Heads turned, eyes narrowing. Whispers spread like wildfire. "What does the river know that we do not?" someone asked. The elder's silence was telling, a pause heavy with unspoken truths. The questions hung in the air, unanswered. The crowd pressed for more, but the elder raised a hand, silencing them. "When the time is right, the river will speak," came the reply. It was a response that satisfied no one and left them restless, yet eager for what was to come. At the edge of the circle, a voice rose, breaking the stillness. "If the river remembers, then why does it punish us? What have we done to deserve this?" Eyes darted toward the speaker, and murmurs of agreement followed. Another voice, sharp and resolute, answered. "The river does not punish. It balances. What was taken must be returned." The tension built, and words came quicker, cutting through the air. Accusations flew. "You knew!" one voice shouted. "You stood silent while the rest of us suffered." The accused stepped forward, anger flashing. "And what would you have done? Face the serpent yourself?" The crowd stirred, the energy shifting as the argument deepened. The elder spoke again, a tone of finality quieting the chaos. "Enough. The river's wrath does not choose sides. It is blind to fear, anger, or guilt. What matters now is what we do next." The crowd dispersed, uneasy but compelled to act. Later, around the fire, stories were shared. "The serpent," one began, "was once a guardian, not a judge." Another leaned in, voice low. "It is said that those marked by the serpent carry its will. They see what others cannot." These words lingered long after the fire burned low. In the silence, the rustling of leaves and the whisper of the wind seemed louder, almost alive. "Do you hear it?" someone asked. The others nodded, their gazes drawn to the shadows. "The spirits," they said. "They are watching." In the days that followed, the village both fractured and united. The blame was heavy, but so was the shared purpose. Bonds were tested, some breaking under the weight, others strengthening. Small gestures of kindness began to surface, a shared meal, a quiet word of encouragement. Despite the tension, a sense of resilience grew. Amid the turmoil, the elder spoke privately with a trusted few. "What happens next will not be easy," they said. "There will be choices, and each one will ripple outward. Be mindful of your steps. They will not only shape your path, but the path of those who follow." The moments of calm were fleeting, overtaken by new revelations. An old proverb was whispered passed from one to another. The water forgets nothing, they said. It sees all, even in the darkest depths. The mysteries deepened, but so did the determination to face them. Each unanswered question, each lingering silence, became a thread pulling them closer to the truth. In the shadows, where the light struggled to reach, hope flickered. It was not loud or certain, but it was there, waiting to be kindled into something greater.